So let's talk a little bit about social services. Now, social services is something that a lot of families do need. They do need the intervention of someone who could stand up for the rights of children and the rights of families and to defeat poverty and defeat abuse, extreme drug use, and alcoholism that destroys family. People need structure, people need discipline, people need guidance. But what social services has become, it has become literally a kidnapping ring that is literally just existing now for profit, especially in a country like Canada, where yes, there is families that need intervention, but the way that the Canadian system is, where it's creating all this crime, creating all this misery, creating all this poverty, creating all this confusion and all this neglect, is becoming a breeding ground for the social services to just take anyone's kids at will. Sure, they got procedures and certain rules that they got to follow, but what happens when the system bureaucratically creates its own rules, creates its own loopholes, makes its industry more powerful by being able to create new laws that allow it to have more of that power, to take kids at will, basically, and then just say that here is the reasons, to say that there is no accountability in a court of law when it comes to these things, because it is all thrown out the window, because now there is some ministry of socialist development that has taken over. And the court and the legality of all of it has basically just become a formality, while these people got free reign to do whatever they want with your kids. Put your kids in whatever environment that they want. Not only that, put your kids in environments that are harmful, where they're exposed to asbestos, where they're exposed to black mold, where they're exposed to rotten food, expired food, where they're exposed to conditions and abuse and sexual molestation by the very people that are supposed to be taking care of them. And you ask yourself, what is this for? Is this for saving children, or is this just a thing that is running for profit? You say, how do people profit of it? Well, jobs. The ability for these people to create their own hours, for the ability for these people to expand their own industry. You should see what's happening right now in the United Kingdom, or whatever you call it, England, or whatever this system has become. It's misery. It's misery where they can take your kids at birth. They can take your kids simply because you got a label on your name. A label that has been put there because you're living in a system that is completely chaotic. Like, there is no normality. The only normality that you have is what you learn from school. And then from school is basically all indoctrination, because you got corporations that are putting quotas on schools so that teachers and these school districts can indoctrinate your kids to the propaganda that these corporations want your kids indoctrinated to accept certain movement, to accept certain products, to accept certain thinking and mentalities that leave your children that eventually become adults completely vulnerable to overspending, to crime, to drug use, to alcoholism. These are real things. This is a fourth world environment that is being created from the first class, second class, and third class. Now you're creating this fourth world environment, where it's an environment that is not there naturally. It's an environment that is being created on purpose. A chaotic environment where suicide is a statistic that is created off another statistic. I don't know if you know what I mean, but creating that environment for children to live in, creating that environment for people to be in, especially with drugs and the access to alcohol and the way it is. And then people say, well, why would you want to limit the rights of people to be able to use what they want or drink beer? Well, why are you limiting the rights of people to be able to express themselves, to be able to question something, to be able to choose what they want to be, what they want to do in their life, without it having to be something that is laid out before them? And if you don't choose whatever is laid out before you, basically, you become some sort of fugitive, some sort of felon. You become someone different in society, someone that's questionable. Now, the majority of people who are over 25, they grew up in a time where the normality was there. It still existed. But a lot of kids in today's times that are growing up that are no older than 20, they don't understand a lot of what's happening with the way things are changing, with the way things are becoming. They just simply do not understand what's happening. They're just living life. They're going day by day. They're not looking at the future. They're not looking at the past. And if they're looking at the future, it's a future that has been put in front of them. It's an idea rather than an actual thing that they're actually going to be able to hold on to. And if they're looking at the past, it's pure manipulation. It's pure guilt tripping. It's basically just used as a strategy, education, to teach your kid how to become something that these corporations want your kids to become, or politicians that have too much power, or people that are governing and have the power from behind the scenes and are putting all these politicians in our face. You got to look at how our systems are. They're literally a mock of democracy. There is no democracy. All these things that we are forced to follow, all these laws that we are forced to abide, wherever they come from, are just being placed there. You can't do this with your dog. You can't do this with your kids. You can't do this with your family anymore. You can't do this with your property anymore. You can't own this. You can't farm this. You cannot produce this kind of food. You're not able to own this because of a certain record you have on your credit. You cannot save up because you're getting taxed to death. And then where's that tax going? To feeding this system that is continuously robbing the people that are participating in that system. And no longer are people participating in that system, people are forced. Because where their tax is going is basically going to a system that is also invading other countries, what they call third world countries. We look at National Geographic, we look at CNN, we look at BBC, we look at all the major broadcasting corporations on TV, with Facebook, with everything, with social media, with everything that is connected to learning in some sort of public way, that's connected to some sort of education, that's connected to some sort of trend, that's connected to a movie or a music or a belief. Even your religion is being controlled. To the point where, yeah, the government doesn't really tax churches, but in return, the churches have to basically do what the government says. You cannot say certain things. You cannot dab into certain things. You cannot do this with your community. Basically, we got full control in return of you not getting taxed. Well, okay, well, let's pay the tax so I can have the same rights as other companies. No, I'm sorry, you cannot do that. Because you have become a company. It's no longer a positive influence. It's no longer a belief. Now it's basically another thing that is being put into this system. It's just another statistic. It's just like another little button that you can push, or another little process or a little procedure that you can work with, basically. But it's not a real thing. That's what's happening with our modern systems. And if you look at Canada, that's following after the model up in the UK. It's not a very good system anymore. It's a system where people don't have freedom, where people are paying so much tax into something that they shouldn't be paying tax into. And if they do have land, they have to go live in the middle of nowhere, deal with very harsh environments, no roads, lack of anything. But if they go closer to the city, if they want to live a little bit more well off and still, work to death the way people always done, and it looks like they always will be, no matter how good things get, or who knows how things are going to get for the future, because it looks like we're entering into a system of eugenics, where how is your lives going to be if we're in this kind of system? But that's what I'm saying. People are working towards a system, paying towards this system, still trying to manage their life, raise their kids, and all aspects of their life, all normality is being removed from them. And that's what these systems are becoming. They're being modeled after the system that right now exists in the UK, which is a pretty horrendous system. It's a system of absolute censorship. You cannot even question your own government. You cannot even look the wrong way. You cannot even have a past where you question something. You cannot even have a record of any sort of mistake that you have made, whether it is credit, whether it is feeling depressed, whether it is just getting fired from work. You're just a target. And if you're not on top, if you're not one of these etchings, if you're not one of these people who are complete servants or policing the others into serving the system, you are nobody. But if you are connected to it, you're going to be a little bit well off, as long as you do not question, as long as you do not have sympathy for your neighbors. And that's how sad things have become. See, I'm just a regular person. You can hear in the background, you can hear little things dropping. My puppies that are moving around, and my dog that's chewing on a bone. It's a pretty relaxed day today, but that is in between having to sustain this, having to watch all this stuff. This is the little piece we have left. And slowly, having the puppies, having your own kids, hearing the laughter of your kids, wanting to do something, getting dressed to go to church later on, that's not going to exist anymore. It's what it looks like. It's what's being questioned every day. People are talking about these new world order agendas and all these conspiracy theories and all these possible conspiracies that are going on. Well, people can literally actually see how we're getting censored, how we're getting our rights taken away, how our food is being genetically modified to the point where it's not even food anymore, where our skies are being pumped with poisons, fake clouds that are actually trapping deadly things inside our atmosphere. And they're saying that this is how we're combating global warming, when before they couldn't even tell us what geoengineering was, what it was about. Way before this idea of global warming, this stuff was happening. And it's pretty sad, because these things are poisonous. These things are killing us. These things are indoctrinating us to basically have a mind of enslavement, where we don't have any rights, and the rights that we do have, we have to give some sort of God thanks to them in an absence of God, and say, hey, at least we're not starving. At least we're not, having bombs going off over our heads every night. But then we look at what we're paying tax into, and that's what our systems are causing for other people. And slowly, they're guilt tripping us into accepting all these things to the point where one day we're just going to have our kids disappear. It's already happening, where suddenly our most valued possessions, our most valued things, and it's already happening, can just be taken away, can be repossessed. But what about when we enter a communistic system where literally the government just does that automatically? That's how communist Russia was. That's how every single communistic system that has existed does it. It just robs people completely, just strips people away of all freedom, of all reality. And then they use their media, their news, their propaganda to tell the world that their citizens are okay. And in a way, that's almost what's happening with our systems. Yes, we fought against Hitler. Yes, we sort of fought a Cold War against Russia and against communism. Well, in reality, communism still did its damage, but our systems did the exact same damage, but in the name of liberating people from tyranny and communism and all that stuff. And same did communism do it against us. The only thing is that we live in our system, and the people who were suffering with communism lived under their system. So eventually people believed that communism was good, that this is good, that having an absence of belief, an absence of culture, an absence of personal structure is good in the name of making this state stronger. And eventually that state does reward its citizens, but at the cost of massacring its entire history, its entire past. And then from there, any post-communistic system will always have that communistic residue. That residue of having no existence, no freedom, unless you are serving this system 100%. Unless you're bowing down to the emperor or whoever the czar is or whoever the president has been for the past 20 years. And you cannot question the system because you'll simply disappear. But that system still pumps out the propaganda saying everything's okay, everything's cool. Hey, in fact, we're on top. Hey, we ride on top of bears. You know what I'm saying? We're cool with this whole espionage business. That's how it becomes. You get your rights taken away, you get your world taken away, you get every substance of your existence taken away. And then eventually this system, becomes so strong where it eventually molds the identity for you. It eventually just tells you this is who you are, this is your future, and your people believe it. And it's a very sad thing. And it's like, when you look at North America, when you look at what Europe is, or at least the west of Europe, we've had a pretty hard past. But when you look at the North American system in particular, it's a system that's trying to influence the rest of the world with its Hollywood, with our good capitalism, which is very positive. We're not communism. We're not fascism. We're not going and just putting people in concentration camps yet. Because that is a very good question. Because we're getting to that point. If we're allowing our good system to be destroyed like this, to be turned into this communistic half fascist, and not even a fascist of some sort of nationalistic identity, it's a fascism of this communistic system. This communistic system's identity, its social justice, becoming the fascism. You know what I'm saying? This right wing representing this left wing. You know what I'm saying? Where this is patriotism. Abusing others, putting others down low. Making all our learning, all our beliefs, just something fake. Something that is in the hands of people that just brag about how they put everybody under and how rich they are and how nice their house is. Well, everybody is in complete servitude, trying to wait for their own if it's given to them. We belong, and we fought for a system, not just a system, but for our existence, to have common sense, to have respect, to have good laws that make sense. And if we ever have to fight to change it, we will, but not to install tyranny. That's almost why we laid our bodies down in those battlefields, so that we can ensure that this contract lasts forever, or at least for as long as it can, with the existing body of laws that we have. Where this bureaucracy defends our system, not bureaucratically defends itself, goes into its own loopholes until it's scot-free and it becomes the king again. But the king again, with like 10,000 little representatives under them, doing democracy for us, representing all our municipalities, all our things. And then they vote for what happens with us. That's not democracy. That is just a complete mockery of democracy. Basically, we are just manipulated under a system like that. So there it is, guys. You heard my video for today. There's part 3. And the title, Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau, I'm going to tell you, in Canada, it doesn't matter who you vote for. Look at these people. Look at what they're bringing to the table. Look how they just blame the last guy for the bad policies, but they don't change them. It's just a them. It's just a they. They're just a character. It's just a personality that's been put on there by the real government of Canada. The people who actually govern the things, who are actually behind the power of Canada and behind the power of the states and behind the power of what the European Union is becoming. This supposed new world order is what it looks like. These people who supposedly represent our country are just representatives representing a certain agenda that we supposedly pick for. This is not democracy. Those people that are actually becoming our candidates are not actual heroes, are not actual people that actually make a difference. They're not actual people who have fought their way up to those ranks. They're people who have fought their way through a phony system and have basically cut corners and done deals and have sold out. It's not even sellout. That's the entire existence of basically the Canadian system, the Canadian Parliament, and to a certain extent, the Congress in the United States. They're systems that have been branched off other systems that couldn't exist anymore because they were so tyrannical. That's almost in a way what the United States was created. It was almost defying itself, yes, being defiant against Britain, but in a way it became the new Britain, but in a different way with this fake idea of freedom. There was freedom for a lot of people in the States. There is freedom for a lot of people in the States. But if you actually look at these systems, what they're actually doing, it's just manipulation. And Hollywood's just making it basically honey to our ears rather than actually us knowing the reality of things like our ancestors did, like our people, like our great grandparents did. They just simply knew what was happening. And they survived. They lived. They try to do the best with their land, with their family. And yes, defend their country. Deal with those politicians, deal with this system, but at the same time try to make it function. And today, supposedly, we got this social justice future of just absolute goodness under the scientific law, basically. No, it's just manipulation. It's bigotry of the church in the past, and the same people who used to govern and rule behind those churches, just basically using the scientific law to censor us, to burn us at the stake, to imprison us, to make us disappear, to prosecute us, to mess with our beliefs. And then you begin to actually look at that book, what Jesus Christ said in the Bible. You're going to begin to see that it has nothing to do with what the church did in the past. You're just seeing the same patterns of that supposed church that a lot of people hate and are scared of, just being turned into the modern law, into evolution, into what we are today, the new bigotry of today. You're censored. You cannot say this. Oh, you offended me. You offended my homosexual rights. And then you look at that industry of people pushing this LGBT, and you're going to see that it's complete manipulation. It's like they're basically they're just committing social engineering. They're just taking away people's rights, censoring people, bringing in new things, bringing in transhumanism, bringing in basically crimes that these people used to do in secret, and now they want to make it law and protected so that they don't have to hide themselves anymore. And that's sad. How do we get our justice if that's the kind of existence that we have with our systems? Anyways, guys, there it is. There's my video, and you heard what I had to say. And what I'm saying is what everybody can see. I'm not saying anything that's some sort of conspiracy theory or some sort of conspiracy that could be happening. I'm just simply saying it for what it is. Look at what social services is. Look at what it is. It's basically socialist services. It's communistic socialist services, basically taking away your kids. It's an experiment. And it's becoming tyrannical. It never was not tyrannical. But before, its tyranny was just hidden under the idea of saving children, to the point where this predator actually did help children, and still in a way does help children. But if you look at it closely, it's a system of indoctrination. It's a system of basically taking your kids away, of socially engineering people, of giving these people more work, and for them to be able to apply to us more laws, to be able to restrict us further, to be able to use the little bit of laws and respect and common sense we have left in our society against us. Look at it very closely. Ask all those mothers that have been through that system, and you're going to ask them how they feel about that. Apart from some mothers that truly needed it and actually did benefit off that system, or were truly that desperate. But you're going to see that most of these mothers and most of these fathers, most of these families, and most of these kids were put through these systems by force. And you're going to see that those systems are connected to drugs. They're connected to to bad mental health. They're connected to bad sexual decisions, bad sexual health, and homosexuality and sexual molestation. Why is it like that? Why do they say that they're trying to protect your kids while they bring kids into the slums, into those environments, into where they're alone, into where kids are committing suicide, into where kids are becoming drug addicts at such high rates and creating these communities to where kids that are not even in this are being dragged into this? Why? Because those communities of drugs and squalor and prostitution are being created by our very own system. Those are very serious accusations. You got to look at it for yourself. How else are we getting all these drugs here? We're getting restricted on owning firearms, on having our own voice, owning our pets. Well, these crimes run rampant, creating slums. And who are the ones that are being policed? It's us, the people who are suffering with this, while these people who commit these crimes on us are being armed, are being supplied, are being allowed to do this. And then what do cops do? They catch some small fish once in a while. Once in a while, they go in there and they make a few busts, but the system continues going. The prison system continues to have its victims and its predators be brought into its cages. There was rumors in the United States, not just rumors, but actual accusations where people lost their jobs, judges lost their jobs, where corporations, private business was basically paying these judges and these systems and these policing systems to grab kids, youth that are not committing crimes, to slap them with everything they can whenever they make a mistake, to encourage them to be in jail, encourage them to be in these foster care systems. You see what I'm describing to you? Whenever there is peace, what's wrong with having peace? Whenever there's peace, whenever there's good, these people need jobs. These people need work. When we don't need to pay tax into something, they find a way to tax us. When we don't need these laws, they find a way to impose these laws. When we don't have terror threats, they bring in the terror threats. When we question things, when we say anything, we are fascist, we are racist, we are some sort of extremist ourselves. Common sense is extreme to these people. Look at it yourselves. You want to know what Canada is? What the Parliament of Canada is? What the system is? It's a system that, yes, where people benefit, where people can start a good life. Same with the United States and a lot of places in Europe that are modeled after these systems. But you're going to see that the majority of it is disintegrating. Look at what people are learning. Look at what people are seeing on TV. It's no longer a mature system. It's no longer a good system. It's a system that's becoming immature. The older it gets, the more immature it is getting. It is disintegrating itself. And then what this system does, it simply just grabs the populations that were good and replaces them with immigration. It doesn't matter who the immigrant is. And it doesn't matter who the people they're replacing are. Whether they are past immigrants, whether, you know what I'm saying, whether they are immigrants at the moment. You know, this system has found its golden age of exploitation. And you're seeing it right now happen with the European Union, especially with the British Commonwealth system and North America. Absolutely. It is not the golden age for us. We think it's our golden age. It is a golden age of exploitation. And it's killing our world. And we are the ones that can actually make a difference, the people from within. So that we don't become a Roman Empire where we disintegrate from the inside and we get eaten up by our enemies, because that's what's happening. How are we defending ourselves if we don't got no defense and the people on top are the ones doing this to us and causing us that vulnerability? We cannot live like that. We have to stand up and we have to use our voice. We have to educate ourselves. We have to use our communities and say no more. That's what I'm saying. Thank you, and God bless you all.